Assalamu alaikum viewers. Welcome to this fifth lecture of International Marketing subject. In our previous lecture, we studied the 5 steps of international marketing process. Those 5 steps were identifying international marketing opportunities, selecting target markets, adopting appropriate international marketing strategies, designing international marketing programs, and finally managing these international marketing programs. Now we move further in the subject area of international markets. Now we discuss in today's lecture the aspect of engaging in international markets. The first question arises, why do firms have to really engage in international markets? What are the sort of compelling reasons or benefits? It is important that we understand these, because these are the motivations of the firm. In our previous lectures, we have been mostly focusing on the motivation of the target markets or the buyers, why they want products and services, and which sort of products and services they would want, and what sort of strategies firms have to adopt in order to become more relevant to those markets. But then there have to be motivation for the firm also, because in our definition of value which is exchanged in an international marketing process, that value is not only the perceived value of the buyer, but also the value for the firms. Not only consumers in the marketplace or the customers in the marketplace have a choice and they choose a product or a service or a brand or a firm which they prefer out of various available options. That choice is also available to firms. There are many segments out there. There are many markets out there. And the choice is open to the firms also, that they can choose to target certain markets, they choose to deliver certain type of products or services to their chosen markets or segments within those markets, and they prefer not to target other markets. So that choice also exists for the firm. So now we see from the firm's perspective, why do they really need to go into international markets and seek business opportunities there? One of the more important aspects which firms consider whether to expand their businesses in international markets or not is the expansion of sales itself. We often would read in business literature that firms need to grow. They need to grow to expand their profits, expand their opportunities. The owners of the firm, the employees of the firm need to grow. The owners of the firm may want increased profits every next year, profit growth. And the employees within the firm want to get promotions, want to get promoted to more responsible jobs, more responsible careers. They want better salaries. They want increments every year. The firm has to grow. And often business scholars say when a firm stops growing, it starts dying. That the people within the organization, when they see that the firm is not growing, then they will feel that there are not many now career advancement opportunities. They may prefer to leave this firm and go to another firm. At the same time, those who have invested in the firm, when they see that the profits of the firms have no potential to grow, then they may as well want to take their money out of the firm's stocks and would want to invest in stocks of such firms where they can anticipate opportunity in growth, in sales and profits and growth of the firm. So the growth is something which a firm has to continuously pursue and continuously achieve. Especially when the firms start to feel that in their business, their domestic markets are saturated, that the market share they have in that domestic market is already strong, and it would be very hard and difficult to expand that market share. And at the same time, when they see that their domestic markets for their products and their category of products is not expanding very fast, then the options left for such firms is to expand their business into other markets, overseas markets, into international markets. That is especially the case for the firms which are operating in smaller economies. While the firms which are operating in larger economies, in bigger countries, where there are much bigger opportunities, where there are many more people living, where the demand for certain products and services is very high, then the firms may find enough opportunities for growth year after year remaining within the domestic markets. But then the firms which are operating in smaller economies, or the firms which have achieved saturation in even larger economies, for them the only option left is to move into international markets. So one of the strong motivations for firms to seek opportunities in international markets is to expand sales. The other important motivation for firms to go into international markets is to seek and acquire resources. Well, funds are one form of resource. A firm goes into international markets, it operates in international markets, it becomes visible into international markets, then people within that market know that firm, trust that firm, know the opportunities and the potential of the firm, would be willing to lend money to that firm, would be willing to invest into that firm. So the firms would want to go to international market to seek financial resources. The firms may also need to go to international market to seek other resources. For example, raw materials. Many of the raw materials come from across the world. The minerals, the agricultural raw materials, chemicals, even labor or other inputs. So the firms have to expand into international countries, international markets, in order to become closer to these resources, to be able to acquire these resources more effectively, more efficiently than other competing firms. Firms may be motivated to expand to international markets to acquire technologies. Certain countries are very strong in certain type of technologies. Some countries are lot of human resources, lot of skills development, lot of research into chemicals, pharmaceuticals. Germany is one example. Well, then there are other countries which are strong in IT, into software development. Well, then there are countries which are very, very strong in agricultural products, in agriculture research, biotechnologies. Then there are other countries which are very, very advanced in art and craft, in fashion designing. So there are different countries in the world have their own unique capabilities in various technology areas. So if firms need those technologies, often it is a compelling reason for them to expand to those relevant countries, those relevant markets, in order to be closer to where those technologies are there, those resources are there. Similarly, firms are also motivated to expand to international markets to acquire skills. Well, there are certain skills in our country also which are not existent in many other countries in the world. For example, stitching football. If there is a sports firm and has to sell footballs, well, then the skills in their best forms are available in our country. Similarly, in case of textiles, because of a very long history of the industry, of a total value chain in our country, from growing cotton all the way to manufacturing ready-made garments. So many international firms would prefer to come to Pakistan to be closer to the skills which have been developed over hundreds of years in the subcontinent in area of textile and its technology. So the firms have motivation to expand to international market, not just to expand their sales, but also to acquire resources, to acquire technologies, to acquire skills. Firms also expand to these international markets to diversify their sources of these resources and sales. Now, diversification is again a very important aspect. There's always an inherent risk in business. We study the aspect of risk and concept of risk in other subjects, especially financial area subjects in business management. In simple form, risk is when in actual we don't achieve what we have targeted or anticipated to achieve. And that variance can be positive and that variance can be negative. For example, if a firm had anticipated to achieve a certain level of sales and in actual after a year is able to achieve larger sales perhaps, it's a good thing. But then if it was not anticipated, maybe the firm was not ready for it, maybe firm did not plan very efficiently for it, and it perhaps did not earn the full potential of profit, because of the fact that the actual sales were more than the expected or targeted sales. But we do understand when the sales are less than target, we really miss on our profit targets and we earn less profits. In fact, is the way from our actual targets. And that variance can happen because of competition or a host of unanticipated reasons. It may be some issue, some political problem, some security problem emerge in some key markets of a firm, and suddenly the people or the consumers out there are not interested in buying products and services of the firm. Then the sales may plummet. Or some natural calamity may happen in a certain market, which may take away the attention of the people and resources of the people away from buying the products and services of the firm, and the sales of the firm may go down unanticipated. So these risks are always there in business world. The firms expand to international markets to diversify these sales risks. So by selling simultaneously to many markets, the firms, if their business goes down into certain markets in an unanticipated reason, well then they have business in other markets also to support. So the firm face lower risk, they diversify their risks, especially when the markets operate in a way which is opposite to each other. That if the market is growing in certain areas while shrinking in others, then the risks are cancelled. So diversification helps. Similarly, diversification helps in acquiring resources also. Resources are very critical. Raw materials are very critical for every firm. For firm producing chemicals, if he is unable to get his raw materials from some markets, then it cannot produce. It will lose on sales. So international firms are critically dependent on the situation in various countries around the world in terms of supply of their essential raw materials. Many firms, like in our country, are also facing risks in terms of acquiring technologies. Often we face sanctions or we face other restrictions where other countries are not willing to supply some essential equipment and technologies to our firms in our country. So the firms have a motivation to diversify their sources of not only raw materials but also their sources of technologies, so that they face less risk. And hence, this is a strong motivation for firms to expand into international markets. The firms also have motivation to expand to international markets because of various government regulations. There may be high taxes on imports of certain products in certain markets. Then there is a motivation for firm to shift its production and marketing function perhaps in those markets where importing the same is exposed to very high level of tariffs and restrictions. The firms have a motivation to avoid these restrictions, to have more free and a better access to those markets. Many a time foreign governments provide incentives for foreign businesses to come and establish in their own countries. They provide subsidies, they provide grants, they provide help, assistance in many forms. And again, an incentive for firms to expand to those foreign markets in order to capitalize on those incentives and on those facilities, which again is a very, very strong motivation. Firms may also want to expand to international markets to follow their customers. After Second World War, many American firms moved to Europe for its reconstruction under the Marshall Plan. So many of the construction equipment manufacturers in the United States were motivated to move also or to expand their operations to European countries in order to facilitate and support their American customers who moved from America for the reconstruction of Europe. Well, in case of our market, we also find that Pakistanis are living around the world. There are large concentrations of our Pakistanis and people of our background living in many European countries, in United Kingdom, in Norway, in United States, and of course in Middle East. And many firms are expanding their products and services and marketing to these areas and targeting the Pakistani communities there. We can find our food stuff there, our food brands there, we can find our clothing brands there, our service sector firms there, for example, airlines. And we can readily find Pakistani brands and products in markets where there are larger concentration of Pakistanis. So firms have a lot of motivation to expand their sales to international markets when their customers are moving to those international markets. So firms have motivations to expand their business, to expand sales, to acquire resources, technologies, skills, to diversify the sources of raw materials, technologies, to capitalize on the incentives, to expand in international markets. And firms also have motivation to expand to international markets to follow their customers. The environment in the world is also changing very rapidly, as we have observed. And because of these changes in environment, there are many reasons for recent growth in international market. The business are expanding very rapidly to international markets. And that phenomena is really growing and expanding very rapidly in the last 3 decades or 4 decades. One of the key reasons is expansion of technologies. As we discussed in our previous lecture, the expansion of IT technology and skills have been a major reason for this explosive growth of international marketing. So growth and expansion of technology provide companies and firms unparalleled, unprecedented opportunities to target and address international customers around the globe at a very low cost. At the same time, it has provided unprecedented opportunities for consumers and customers around the world to link with the firms and exposed to so many choices. Never existed before the advent of this IT technology. The expansion of technology has also helped to efficiently and effectively distribute products worldwide through air, with the expansion of aerospace technology. We have efficient airlines and air delivery firms which pick our products from one market, and in very little time they bring those products and services to any other market world over, especially suitable for perishable goods, agricultural products, farm produce, which have very little shelf life. So these products can be picked and delivered to a distant market around the globe very fresh in a very short period of time, not more than few hours. Unprecedented opportunity for delivery and distribution due to this expansion and air travel. At the same time, transportation on road, over land and through sea has also improved tremendously with the construction of infrastructure and roads and modern vehicles and modern systems. In mega ports around the world, in any one day, more than 300 to 400 large ships can dock, unload their cargo, load fresh cargo, and move on the way to their next destination. And everything is computerized in those ports. When the ships are coming to dock, the computers already know about each individual container and its location on the ship. And that computer program ends, and they are already in position to pick the cargo and unload it in the specific required sequence and specific required location for dropping the cargo in that market or for transshipment. Unprecedented efficiency, and that has not only increased the speed, that has not only increased the quality of distribution, the scale of distribution, but it has also reduced the price of distribution around the world. Similarly, expansion of other technologies like telecommunications have helped in an unprecedented way to link the firms with each other, firms with their markets, firms with their subsidiaries, subsidiaries with their head offices, and at the same time with their customers and customers with the firm. So these are the type of technological expansions and development which have really occurred in the last few decades, which have really worked to expand and facilitate firms to expand their businesses into international markets. Another phenomena which has really contributed very, very strongly in the last 50 years or so towards the expansion of international markets is the facilitation of movements of goods and services across the borders. At the turn of last century, before the Second World War especially, the markets were very closed. The countries imposed, and countries and their colonies together imposed very high tariff barriers and duties to protect their domestic industry. Hence, it was very difficult for firms from other countries to be able to penetrate or establish in these markets. So every major country was pursuing to facilitate and protect its own domestic industry and supporting their domestic industry in every possible way to expand overseas. Not only through protecting their own markets, the countries were also devaluing their currencies accordingly in order to make their products, the products of their firms, more attractive, more cheaper for foreign buyers in foreign markets. Things really started to change after the Second World War with the establishment of United Nations and other multilateral bodies which worked to reduce these barriers, which worked to bring the world together as one open market to facilitate expansion of trade across the globe. One such multilateral organization is the World Trade Organization, which has its manifesto, which has its motto to turn the world into a free market zone. The member countries are required to reduce and eventually try to eliminate any form of restriction for foreign goods in their domestic markets. The tariffs and restrictions have really come down in the last 30-40 years. Unprecedented access to world markets is now available for firms and businesses, especially among the WTO member countries, where it is forbidden to discriminate against any member country's products and services. But WTO member countries are obliged to provide undiscriminated, same and similar opportunities to foreign firms as they give to their domestic firms. So this liberalization of cross-border trade has really facilitated and strongly promoted expansion of international markets. The third such factor is development of supporting institutions. Well, when the trade has to take place, we need financial institutions to support those trade. The title ownership has to change. When the goods are and so the trade cannot really expand if it is not really regulated properly through agreements, contracts, so that the traders, the buyer and seller, operate in a ideally risk-free environment. That the buyer gets what the buyer desired to buy according to the offer, and the seller gets his money. Now this is very complex thing in order to ensure if the buying and selling has to be done across borders. Because if there is disagreement or there is problem happening in trade across borders, then it's complexity of settling it through legal system. Which country's laws to apply? Well, foreigners may find it very difficult to litigate in other countries. So in the last 30-40 years, as the world markets were opening up, at the same time the world bodies were working to establish such multilateral organizations which are helping in the background and facilitating this trade. The global insurance companies, global financial institutions and organizations, which are supported by multilateral contracts and agreements, and then enforcing bodies, which across the globe are ensuring that the trade and the agreements are protected and are secure. So they are helping really to expand this phenomenal growth in international markets. Another factor which is really helping to expand this international market is international competition. Firms are left with no choice but to expand internationally. As markets are opening up, even the domestic markets are not protected from international competition. In our own country, in Pakistan, we are seeing many foreign companies coming to our country, establishing their businesses in almost every type of industry. So if a firm thinks that they can survive or they can be protected from competition if they just stick to their domestic markets, they're quite wrong. So this liberalization of trade advancement of technology and pursuit of firms to expand internationally have brought many multinational and foreign firms into our own country. So domestic firms are feeling extreme pressure from foreign competitors who are coming to domestic markets. So there is no choice but to expand internationally. There were many American firms in 70s and 80s which started to feel tremendous pressure from Japanese firms in automobiles, in electronics, in photography, and in many other areas. And then many of these American firms eventually decided to move and expand into the Japanese markets, to the home markets of their competitors, in order to counter the pressure of competition. There was perhaps no other choice. So, no choice for domestic firms, because technically there is no domestic market left anymore. Every market is an open international arena, especially for WTO member countries, because they just cannot discriminate. So every WTO member country market is basically an international market. If a firm is operating in its local market also, it is in fact an international market. So the rules of international competition apply. No firm can be protected now under the agreement of WTO. No country, even our country now, cannot take extraordinary steps to protect our domestic industry, because then it will be against the spirit and the rules and the agreements of WTO and other international agreements perhaps which our country has signed. So it's essential for domestic firms now to expand overseas, to counter the competition, because competition is coming to their home markets. Other important aspect which is happening in international arena is the mobility of the customers, the convergence of the demands and consumer habits. Many people from our country are traveling overseas, acquiring foreign tastes, acquiring affinity to foreign brands. Through cables and international networks, people in domestic markets are getting exposed to international products, international brands, and way of life of other people. So cultural borrowing is taking place. So this convergence of tastes, convergence of preferences, and convergence of demands and convergence of wants is creating a more standardized demand for products and services. So the firms now have to see these standardization of demand and services and requirements and convergence of needs and convergence of wants. The firms have no choice but to plan their strategies at an international level in order to cater for this convergence of demands and products. The other factor which we had discussed earlier on is helping tremendously in growth of international markets for firms to expand in international markets is push from local governments, especially from underdeveloping countries, which need foreign currencies, which need the businesses to expand in international markets, to be able to earn foreign exchange and remit it back to their countries. There's not just phenomena in developing countries. Many developed countries are pushing their firms to expand overseas in order to achieve growth, achieve more prosperity. So many governments, including our governments, have created various departments, various programs, various incentives, which force, which motivate, which support firms to expand into international markets. And that is happening worldwide. Every other country in the world has massive programs and major initiatives to encourage, to support, to facilitate their firms to expand into international markets. And if many, many countries in the world are doing it at the same time, so certainly together it is resulting into tremendous expansion of international business. We see even larger and larger number of firms from many, many different countries expanding into international markets, intensifying the competition, expanding the international markets, really bringing down the boundaries of trade and converting many markets into global markets. Another factor which is really helping the growth of international markets is the increasing resources of the firms. For the last 100 years especially, we have seen many multinationals really growing and acquiring unprecedented scale of resources. Now we see many of the large multinationals in the world which have their economies, their buying and selling larger than many, many countries of the world. Many firms in petroleum sectors, in consumer goods, in retailing have sales of hundreds of billions of dollars. And together they are selling and buying is an economy which is often larger than many large economies around the world. Such has become the size of many multinationals. Huge amount of resources, capabilities, skills and access is available to these big, huge multinationals, which have technologies, funds, resources, accesses, people, and whatever is needed to expand in international markets. They find little risk or little shortage of resources to expand in international markets. And we see now that these firms are present in almost every viable international market around the globe. It has only recently happened in the last, especially 100 years. And 100 years are not a long period in the life of humanity on the world. It's a very recent phenomenon. So we are seeing a number of factors which are coming and helping firms and encouraging and motivating firms to expand into international markets. As a result, the international markets are expanding and international markets are growing. But then there are a lot of benefits of trading into international markets. The benefits for the firms, benefits for the consumers, and benefits for the nations whose firms are very successful in international markets. Exports and ability of a nation's firm to be successful in international markets brings unprecedented prosperity to the country of origin. Around the world, whichever country we see is very prosperous, rich, is because of the fact that its firms increasingly are operating into international markets. We will not see any advanced country in the world, we will not see any prosperous country in the world that does not have firms which are successful in international markets. More of the firms of a country are successful in international markets, more prosperous that country is. So clearly, we see that the prosperity of any nation is very strongly correlated with the ability of its firms to succeed in international markets. Why? Because to succeed in international markets, firms should have the capability to produce superior products and services. In our countries also, we see that those products which are exported are of better quality. Because competition is much more intense in international markets. There are firms coming from around the globe, coming with their technologies and skills. So the companies which can succeed in international markets, especially when those markets are open markets, are only those which are very best. So in order to succeed in international market, the firm has no choice but to create the best and the most superior products and services. Now, to be able to produce such superior products and services is essential for the firm to acquire and to build such superior capabilities. Firm has to have superior technology, must have the capability to use that superior technology, must have superior skills for innovation, and that's not possible if firm does not have superior human skills, superior education, superior capabilities. But that also requires the firm to be able to pay superior salaries. Now, if firm is not able to pay superior salaries, then these skilled people will readily find employment elsewhere in another market. So brain drain is going to happen. Those countries, those markets which do not export or do not have firms which are not successful in international markets, then they do not have employment opportunities good enough in their domestic markets to retain the skilled workforce. And the brain drain happens. So their best people, their most skilled people, most educated people go overseas to such markets where they can find suitable employment. So if a nation wants to retain its best people within the country, then it should be able to create such superior employment opportunities. And only when the country's firms are engaged very widely in international markets, that they are very successful in international markets, they are able to acquire superior technologies, they are able to acquire superior resources, and they need to create superior products, and hence they need superior people, and they create employment opportunities for highly skilled people. All very interrelated. The fortunes of a nation, the opportunities for superior employments only exist when the domestic firms are capable and successful in international markets. When many firms of a country are also doing business in other markets, the country itself is diversifying its economy. Well, countries' economies also go through their ups and downs, their cycles. Some year a country's economy is doing very well, and some other year the economic growth is not that strong. So what really drives economic growth is, of course, its production of goods and services and value addition. Simply. So superior products require superior value addition, superior employment, bigger difference between the raw material prices and the final selling prices. So hence higher value addition. That's where we see that the countries which have companies which are successful in international markets have more prosperous economies. At the same time, if many companies of a country are engaged extensively in business and are successful around the globe in many product areas, well, economy of that nation is also very well diversified, very well protected from ups and downs and cycles of economic upturn and downturn. So those countries which are very successful in international business, have large number of firms selling to international markets, see a more stable economic growth. So these are enormous benefits for the countries, not just for the buyers in international markets, not just for the firms that they prosper when they start to sell successfully in international markets, but also for the nations which create such firms which are able to sell to international markets, that they become more prosperous and that their economies are much more stable and protected from downturns. Not just exports help, imports also help. So dealing with international markets in any way helps. Not just by selling to them, but also buying from them helps. Because if a country or if a company is able to acquire in a more efficient way from other firms, from multinational firms, from other international firms, from other international markets, then has access to better variety. So the consumers who are living in such countries where multinationals or foreign firms or other markets can freely supply their products and services, then consumers have a better choice, they have better variety of goods available to them. They also have better quality of goods available to them. They really don't have to pay a higher price because of increased competition and worldwide availability of products and services to them. So imports and free imports also tremendously help. An ability to buy freely from or source freely from the world tremendously helps. Not just domestic consumers, not just domestic firms, but also to the country itself. The imports also create essential competition, which keeps the prices low. For whatever reason, whenever we see that the market is protected, maybe on the grounds of protecting infant industry, or maybe the industry is declared strategic and hence government want to protect it, or for any other reason, the consumers end up paying a higher price for the same product and services because of that protection. Any form of protection or discrimination against competition increases the prices of goods and services which people get. And if the prices are able to be low because of international competition, then a nation can avoid inflation. Inflation means for the same money, we buy less goods. So inflation is high. But if inflation is kept low, then the purchasing power of people is better, then people are able to enjoy more variety and more consumption of goods. And so we see that engaging in international business not only helps the firms to earn better profits, to diversify their sales and their resources and their raw materials, it also helps the consumers and customers to get better variety of products and services, to get better quality of products and services, to get better prices for those products and services. It is also critical for the nations to ensure that increasing number of their firms are successful internationally, so that not only they are able to earn foreign exchange, but also to be able to get technological superiority, to be able to get better economy, more stable economy, and also to be able to get low inflation and better growth. So it's absolutely critical in today's time, especially when the times have changed towards globalization, that every nation around the world ensures that increasing number of its firms are successful in international markets. Now we see how these firms trade in international markets. And when we say international marketing, what does it really mean? There are many ways in which firms get engaged into international markets. One is, of course, through exporting products or trading in products. The firms manufacture technology products, agricultural products, raw materials of all sorts, consumer goods, industrial goods, strategic goods like defense equipment, and they sell to international markets through exports. So manufacturing is done in domestic markets, and then the manufactured goods are transported through ships or by air or over land or if it is a service product, maybe through cable to foreign markets and sold there. The firms also engage into international market through exports of services. Travel is a form of service. Airlines, domestic airlines, not only take domestic people to foreign markets, but they also take foreigners from one market to another foreign market, or foreigners from foreign market to domestic markets. Increasing form of service around the world. An essential form of service. If the airlines of a country are not strong and not established, then a lot of foreign exchange is going towards other airlines which are taking domestic passengers to foreign markets. Shipping, other modes of transportation are ever increasing service sectors. Then other form of services are legal services, medical services, educational services, and we see tremendous opportunities in international markets for those services. And we are seeing many domestic firms from Pakistan, not just manufacturing firms which are expanding into international markets. We have also started to see our service sector firms expanding into international markets. We can also see very established educational firms also expanding into international markets now. Not only the firms are becoming stronger, superior, but they're also bringing in much needed foreign exchange and employment opportunities for locals. Other forms of services can be through licensing, that is renting assets, technologies, brands, or through franchising, where the technologies and brands and assets are not only rented, but also the format of selling them is provided. And hence, the franchisor is continuously engaged with franchisee in selling operations. Firms also engage in international markets through investments. These can be direct investments, and by definition, an investment is a direct investment when the investor has at least 10% management shares in the foreign investment. So direct investments can be in the form of wholly owned subsidiaries, joint ventures, or mixed ventures where foreign governments or governments in any form are involved in that venture. Or it can be portfolio investments, where the objective is not to get engaged into the management of the foreign business, but rather a more passive investment. Portfolio investments may include investment into stock markets. It can be bonds and loans given in foreign markets, or it can be money market investments. So in this lecture, we have seen that it's important for firms, for consumers, and for countries to get engaged and exposed to international markets. And we have also seen and briefly discussed some of the methods which firms adopt to get engaged into international markets. Thank you very much. Khuda Hafiz.